All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Spiritual Science Loft Talk. Thank you all for coming out on this wintry January evening here in Toronto, January 2018. Yeah, I thought I'd start on kind of a dark note and talk about the lightning strike of modern technology and some of the things that have just mushroomed in our midst. I'm going to name a few, and then you can perhaps think of some of the things that have found their way into your home, into your life, or into your consciousness. Did you know we're actually entering the age of graphene? That's right. Historically, ages are often named after the technological substance that was predominant. So we have the Stone Age, we have the Bronze Age, and we have the Iron Age. And now we're entering the age of graphene. That's right. Back in November, Samsung announced a new battery technology using a substance called graphene, which is really derived from that simple substance called graphite that you find in your ordinary kitchen graphite pencil. But this thing is going to outstrip the powers of lithium batteries. It's going to allow you to recharge your device, handheld device, in about 12 minutes, and your electric car in about an hour. So this is, of course, going to change everything again. And battery life has always been one of those problematic areas of technology, and so Samsung is right now starting to produce these batteries somewhere in the world. So fasten your seatbelt and hold on to your smartphone. Of course, there's the ubiquitous smartphone that anybody here not have a smartphone? Oh, that's very smart of you.
I don't have a phone.
You don't have a phone, yeah. Well, that's good, you know, because people that have smartphones, it's a little bit humbling because smartphones are smarter than most of us and certainly more organized than most of us and how they handle information. And then there's Robo-Bees. Yes, now they're making robotic bees, these tiny little drones that'll fly around and replace the bees that are dying off from the colony collapse disorder, which is being caused by other technology that's become ubiquitous in our environment, the spraying of pesticides. So next time you see a bee coming at you, don't necessarily swat it, because it may not actually sting you, because it's just a robotic bee, and I don't think they're programmed to sting people. How about robotic seals? That's right, there's a company in Japan that has invented a robotic seal called Paro, and it's being used to keep patients with dementia quiet and content. But these are the ones that are fuzzy white things on the outside, but inside there's the motor with sensors for sound and touch and heat and movements that will react to the dementia patients, and even if you call its name, it'll bark back at you. So these dementia patients actually think that it's real.
Oh.
Yeah, they actually think it's real. They don't know the difference. So that's kind of an interesting moral dilemma there. Like, how do you feel about that? Giving this to dementia patients and not telling them that it's a robot and letting them think that it's... So these are the kinds of dilemmas that we're faced with. This is obviously the controversial idea, to give something to a patient that's purportedly one thing, but really is not that. It works, but is it ethical to be doing that? So I don't sit here to pretend to have the answers to these things. I'm just trying to magnify some of the dilemmas that we're facing as we evolve very quickly forward with these lightning strikes of new technologies. How about ecobots? These are little bots that will capture and digest flies and other bugs, and there's a biochemical substance in there, and when it digests the fly, it produces electricity that will run its own motor. It's interesting how, you know, in this evolution of technology, there's this desire within humans to create things that are more and more lifelike. That's really, you know, what we're seeing here. It's like, how can we make technology more and more, you know, a simulacrum to a human or a plant or an animal? Then there's the self-driving semis. Yes, read an article recently in a magazine about already on the road, being tested, 18-wheelers that are driving around the continent without a driver. Yes, from one side to the other side of the country, and there's nobody behind the wheel. Yeah. Of course, this is going to save companies lots of money because they don't have to pay to have drivers in the vehicle. And also, they can have these trucks following very closely behind one another. They can have a whole train of these trucks moving down a highway, which cuts down on the drag, you know, from the wind. And so it cuts down on fuel costs. But even here, there's also moral questions because the truck has to be programmed so that in the event that there is an accident, because you know, there are going to be accidents that's not necessarily the truck's fault, but say somebody skids on the ice in front of them, the truck has to make a choice. What is it going to do? Is it going to turn itself off the highway and crash in the ditch? That's going to wreck the stuff that's in the back of the truck. Or is it going to slam into the car? Or is it going to go over the meridian? Is it going to hit that pedestrian? Or is it going to hit those pedestrians? The truck has to make moral choices. Yeah, very interesting.
I saw a driverless car a couple weeks ago blow through a streetcar stop. You know how, because the doors go out, but the car can't recognize that. That's kind of just like something that we see, and we're like, oh yeah, you stop with the doors open in the streetcar, but it just like.
I think it's interesting, you know, the comment you made about the cryptocurrencies, and you know, in theory, you know, there's a lot of good ideas around it. You know, in principle, it's something that may have value and have credibility. But as you said, when people get involved, get corrupted, and people get emotional, you know, so much of this is just emotion-driven, just astral forces-driven, that it lost its credibility, and, you know, the market plummeted and so forth because of the human component in the formula. Because of the you said, they're, you know, corrupt, you know, so we're really looking at the morality of the people that are holding the technology. That's the kind of a key point in this material. I also want to look at how a lot of the technologies that are emerging are really aligning with this individuation that's taking place amongst humanity. You know, we're all individualizing and getting our own identities, right? You all have your own SIN number and so forth. And so the technology now is like you have your own personal computer, right? It's a PC, a personal computer. It's just yours, and you have it tailor-made to you. You know, there's the iPhone, the iPad, the iPod. You know, the technology is really something that's more and more targeting us as an individual, to the point where we may have individual chips installed in our brains. You know, we go to our laptop and it has facial recognition. It recognizes your eye. You can put your fingerprint on it to as your password, and so forth. And of course, we can't forget about social media and what a big boon that has become. Just another lightning strike, you know, that's come up in all of our lifetimes. And how we can have incredible extension of our personal self. We can reach out to the other side of the planet. Just, it's right there in your personal computer. And the rest of the planet can reach you as well. It can reach in. But the question is, you know, but to what are you connecting with out there? And what is it that's really connecting with you? And through what? Through what is it that the connection's being made? Do we really know? And this is one of the things I want to look at tonight, is what is this medium that we are connecting through when we use technology for connection? Because as you've all experienced, there's lots of internet clickbait. right? The clickbait that's there, just ready to seduce not only your hapless screenager, the term screenagers, constantly clicking on the clickbait, but it's really, the internet's really an extension of Maya, right? This is the Vedic concept. Maya is that the world is full of trickery and illusion and deception, and this clickbait is just stuff that's trying to trick us into clicking on their website, and then they get monetized, and money in their pocket, and a waste of your time, basically. So it's really magnified through this internet, the reality of life, that we live in a realm of trickery and deceit and illusion. And then there's the ultimate form of technology that supposedly is right on the horizon, AI, but more to the point, transhumanism. And I have this book. Some of you may have read some of Ray Kurzweil's work. He was a big wig at Google, off and on, and wrote this book, The Singularity is Near. The Singularity is Near. And the subtitle is When Humans Transcend Biology. And so this is kind of the ultimate dream and hope for a lot of people like Ray Kurzweil, who is actually taking tons of vitamins every day to put in his body, so that when he dies, his body will be preserved and he can have it put in cold storage, and then when the day that technology is here, he'll be taken out of cold storage and he will be converted into a trans-humanist, which is to say that there's a complete unification between biology and technology. That's what he means by singularity. But I kind of take offense to that, because I think these words, transhumanism and singularity, are being misappropriated and co-opted and being used provocatively, because those are concepts and terms that have come from your and my ancestors over eons. This idea of singularity being not union with the machine, but union with the divine. Right? That's what the word religion means. Ruat Lagari means reunion with spirit, with the divine source. And so he's taken this term singularity and debased it into something where he thinks he's going to be merged with the machine. And same with the word transhuman. I think we're all here aspiring to go beyond human nature. We're wrestling with our human nature with the hopes of becoming something more than human. And he's saying, oh, well, yeah, you could be more than human. We'll just, fix you up with a nice, bot in the back of your head.
It's pretty short-sighted, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a large part of the population that has this as their hope. They feel like this is their shot at immortality. Is that, someday you're going to be able to download the contents of your brain onto, a portable hard drive.
And it's not even going to be you either. It's going to be a copy of you.
Yeah, it's all pretty interesting, how they work with this idea, but it's really based on the premise that there's nothing more to you than the physical body, and the brain in the body is you, and that's kind of where we're at the sad low point in our cultural history, where there's so much focus on the brain. And don't get me wrong, I mean, the brain is a wonderful organ, but it's just a physical organ. It's just a physical organ. Yeah. There's lots of anecdotal evidence to say that we are beyond the body. People that have died and come back, people have had experiences on psychoactive substances, and they've experienced themselves out of the body. And maybe we can't prove it in the usual scientific mean that, oh yeah, there is life beyond the body, there is life beyond death. But there's lots of proof, and this is really the first time in all of history that people haven't believed that. All of our ancestors have believed that there's something beyond the physical, that there's something beyond death, that we can connect to our loved ones on the other side, that we should be connecting with our loved ones on the other side. And I do that here at our Loft Talks about twice a year. We have time to connect with those on the other side. Let's take a moment and say, hey, hi everybody that's here with us. There's those that are here, there's those that are not here, and we should be remembering them. They're still part of the team, still part of the soul family. And this transhumanist, materialistic paradigm that has come up just really in the last short while is the basis of this sort of idea. But you have to remember that spiritually, in the realm of Maya, there's always going to be counterfeits. There's always going to be counterfeits of the real McCoy. And that's part of our job as developing our spiritual capacities, is to spot the counterfeit. You know, just like they try to spot counterfeit bills at the store, we have to spot the counterfeit concepts, because we don't want those counterfeit concepts in our mind. We don't want to have erroneous thinking. We don't want to have half-truths cluttering up our mind and clogging up our spiritual capacities. So one of the fundamental ways of looking at this conundrum, you know, this machine-based world, this computer-driven culture, is that it's all running on a binary programming. Binary, zeros and ones, switches that are on or off. And the whole universe actually runs on kind of a binary process of duality. Right? The universe runs on the play of duality, the dynamics of duality, always producing a third. Between two, you have a third. Between mommy and daddy, you have a third. Between the masculine and feminine, you have a third. You keep birthing a third. But can a binary computer produce a third that is something of value, something that is living, something that is feeding life rather than death? Yeah, the universe works on duality. You know, this idea of yin-yang is always producing something from the center, a third and another third. And so life is engendered, consciousness is engendered. So I'm just bringing it as a question, you know, can the binary code of a computer actually serve that? And I'm of the position where I look for the middle path. I tell people my middle name is Middle. Because I'm always looking for the middle path with things. And really the question tonight is, you know, I've got on the board here, I've got, you know, this on the far side, it says manifestation. There's a path of manifestation, things coming into manifestation. And on this side, this upward moving path called liberation. And, you know, there's all this stuff coming into manifestation, really with the view of serving liberation. But when is it not liberation, and when is it enslavement? Right? Because enslavement's not over. You know, enslavement has just taken on different guises. We can become enslaved by that which is in the manifest realm. But let me just move on here to another book I've been enjoying called The Religion of Technology. Yeah, very juicy read, actually by a Canadian author, David Noble. And he talks about how religion and technology historically have always worked together. Down through the ages, you've seen the spiritual stream in a civilization working with the technological stream, whatever it may be. You know, it might be the edifice builders, the masons, you know, the people that were creating things for rituals, the things that serve the society. This religious stream guided the technological stream, so that hopefully there would be some sort of moral backing, some sort of moral compass that was guiding the use of the technology. But you know, you can't separate the spiritual stream from the technological stream too far, because humans cannot live in a balanced state without that. And we see that even now in the world today where, we've got all this technology here in the West, and so much of us are embracing the spiritual stream of the East through yoga and Chinese medicine and Kabbalah and things like this. And what's happening in the East? They're embracing the technology that has been spawned here in the West. Now, the next question is, where does technology come from? Where does technology come from? Etymologically, the word technology comes from the Greek techne, which means an art or a skill or craftsmanship. And I think that's kind of interesting. In its inception, technology was really more focused on the human element, on the skill of the human, on the ability of the human to do a craft. And it was less on the actual technological device or tool. Technology was not just, it was about the human being able to create something with the assistance of some sort of tool. Today, technology has really become anonymous. Like the creators of your device, do you know who created your smartphone? These are all very faceless people. And that's something about how the technology today has kind of sublimated the human component. And this is the concern. This is the central concern, is in this dualism of the binary world, where does the human stand? Where is the human being supported? There's a line from Homer's Odyssey, a man of many devices. A man of many devices. And of course, we all are people of many devices these days. But there's this odd association between a device and a question of morality. Because the word device can mean an invented thing, or it can mean a scheming or contriving of the mind. It can be a physical thing, or it can be a scheming or contriving of the mind. Or the word contrivance. How's your contrivance? That can be a mechanical appliance, or it can be a carefully devised plan, a scheme, something that's concocted through thought. The word machination. The word machination can refer to some sort of mechanical machine, or refer to the machinations of your mind. Again, it's something that's going on inside. Artifice. An artifice is a manufactured device, or it can be trickery. Trickery, ingenuity, inventiveness. And finally, the word craft. The craft can refer to your manual dexterity to craft something and making an object. Or you can be a crafty person, someone who's adept at deceiving others. So it's interesting, this correspondence between, craft and device and technology, and a question around the morality of it. This question about where technology comes from and how I put up here on the board, and you can come up and look at it during the break for those of you that can't see it. At the top, I've got part of a sphere here that says the cosmos, the periphery, the outer periphery, and then down at the bottom, the Earth's center. You're at the Earth's center, and then outwards, more peripherally, is the cosmos that surrounds us. And that in the manifestation of anything material, including technology, there's been this downward movement. This downward movement that's moving from a realm of living spiritual beingness that then takes on different qualities through the astral planes, down through the ethers, and then finally becomes inanimate matter, some sort of physical form, function, or power. And there's a nice quote that says that physical matter is the end of God's road. physical matter is the end of God's road. As things move from living spiritual beingness, formerly known as God, has then moved down, picked up qualities of the astral plane, the ethers, and then come into physical form, and really is only a step away from being a corpse. Once something physical is no longer connected to life ethers, it has no longer got any life in it. Like a plant that no longer has its etheric nature, it becomes a corpse. And so in a way, that's why I gave it the title tonight, that technology is the corpse of light. That starting out as light, as an idea that takes on quality through the astral planes, it then eventually becomes something lifeless and potentially just a corpse. So I'm going to just stop right there because I know that may sound kind of provocative, and some of you might be going, yeah, but no, there's a ghost in the machine. There's something living in my smartphone. I know I have this relationship with my smartphone, and I know when I'm blue, it does something to cheer me up. It rings for me. That there is something spiritual that's kind of lurking there in the background behind technology. And well, I want to continue and taking you further into some of the esoteric perspectives of things, drawing largely from the spiritual science of people like Rudolf Steiner, and of course this book by Paul Amberson called Machines and the Human Spirit. And we left off talking about this downward stream into manifestation, things coming from source, from spirit, from the living spiritual beingness formerly known as God, that has gone through levels and stages of spiritual evolution. And I won't talk about the stages as described in esoteric literature, such as through Rudolf Steiner, talking about old Saturn, old Sun, old Moon, and now the fourth stage, the present stage that we're in, called the Earth stage. But there has been large cycles of time prior to this where the original idea has gone through this descent towards concretization, towards a material, solid state. And you could think of it in a way that it has been an excretion, that spirit has excreted things into matter. Excretion, squeezed out of this invisible, intangible quality, state that we call spirit, and come into physical form. And the idea of us has been there from the beginning, slowly coming into this form that we have today on this planet that we share with other forms, other life forms, i.e. the animal world and the plant world, and then of course the mineral world. And I always like to make this kind of outlandish statement about how the human actually came before the animals.
That's so outlandish.
The room just fell into a hush. That's right. Because that seems kind of backwards from the Darwinian evolutionary theory that we have and been taught in school, as in a rather dogmatic way, that and the human evolved out of these lower life forms. But in fact, the human has been here before, has been here from the beginning in a different state, and that the animal forms were kind of off-castings or excretions or earlier iterations of human development that were kind of a testing of form, finding the form that the human could inhabit as we have today in this vertical uprightness. And likewise, the plants came before the mineral world. That probably sounds outlandish too. But if you think about it, where does all the matter in the mineral world come from? It's from the corpses of plants. It's from dead plant material is what produces the carbon and the mineral world. So this may sound like sci-fi stuff, and it would take me a little while to explain exactly how that works, but from a spiritual science perspective, that is the way things have unfolded in this process of manifestation coming from a source spiritual state being excreted down into physical form. And not only that, there's been a myriad of other beings that have been participating in this project. So we could put them into basically two categories. That higher beings, sometimes known as the spiritual hierarchy, or sometimes called the spiritual holarchy, or supra forces, supra nature forces have guided this process, also evolving along with us. And then there's what's known as sub-nature forces. So kind of higher and lower beings that have been involved in this process of manifestation. And in fact, the substance of their being is in the material world. Not only have they been guiding and evolving in this grand project called Project Earth, but they have, through their own efforts, put something of their own substance into the crystallized earth. So in fact, what you're sitting on is spiritual beings. Spiritual beingness is in all material matter. So this is an important concept to realize that in the solid state, it's actually frozen spirit. Frozen spirits, timeless frozen spirits, are frozen in time and space. But Project Earth is not over yet. We're really probably somewhere in the middle of this grand journey that we have been put on. And there's the other half. There's the upward current of liberation. And this work that's been done by the supra-nature forces and the sub-nature forces is now being taken on by us. This human that's been in the mind of spirit from the very beginning is now being given this responsibility to work in the material world in the liberation of spiritual beingness and to assist it in its evolution to a higher state of being. So we stand here in the middle with all our material items, all our technology that is really full of spiritual life, just wanting to emerge, wanting to be worked with, wanting to be partnered with. So when it comes to technology, there's three different kinds of technology as described in this book, Machines and the Human Spirit. There's atomic technology. And atomic technology is really a broad term to refer to any technology that works with the transformation of substance from one form to another through its destruction. Through its destruction. And this is something we need to do at this time, and we are doing it. Like you burn a log, you destroy the log, and you turn it into heat. But we are actually working with death forces. We're working with death forces, and this is where some of the danger comes in, right? You could get burnt from the fire. But likewise, there are these sub-nature forces in electricity. Electricity, which is another form of fire, you could say. And we can get burnt by electricity. We can get burnt by the misuse of it. It's a very powerful, powerful atomic force that we really don't understand. And yet we're so plugged into it these days. But we don't really realize the power and somewhat danger of it. I mean, we know that it's dangerous if you get electrocuted. But on this upward moving path, what we're encountering is ideas like this. Another book by Ray Kurzweil called The Age of Spiritual Machines. A very interesting idea, interesting book. When computers exceed human intelligence. And we're really there. It's not a matter of when, it's a matter of like, how are we to deal with the technology that we are developing that is exceeding human intelligence, and in fact is full of these spiritual forces. That we are connecting with spiritual forces through our technology. And this whole idea of what is it, a spiritual machine? When we talk about our spiritual life, we're really talking about our life on the vertical axis. Right? We're really talking, like religion, religare. It's about reunion with the spiritual source of things. So, what is it for it to be a spiritual machine? Can a machine actually have spiritual connection? I see, animals. Animals are not human, but animals sometimes jump up. I think of dogs that jump up into the vertical, right? They jump up on you. Animals are primarily on the horizontal axis. That's their form. They're restricted to that because that's their evolutionary stage. But they want to be something more. And they jump up, specifically a domesticated animal wants to be part of the human family, right? Wants to join you at the table on Sunday dinner, and jumping up because there's this urge within animals to evolve to its next state of being. But can a machine come into this idea of rising up into verticality? I was down in Jamaica over the holidays, and there's lots of chickens roaming around in Jamaica, and I was sitting there having my breakfast one day and at the hotel, and there's chickens just running around the hotel, and there was this mother hen with two little chicks, and they're all like down in the horizontal, picking for worms, looking for food to sustain their survival. But then there was some noise off in the distance, and the mother hen, her neck went up like this. It was like into the vertical because she was alarmed. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting. That really is showing, some of that seed awareness and spirit that really has a seed of morality to it, that she's like alarmed and wants to protect her little chicks that are there. So this whole idea about the verticality, and back to this idea of the third, because there's an idea in the Kabbalistic teachings about the three pillars. And there's the two pillars, as in the binary dualistic model that we were talking about previously. But it's always trying to give birth to a third. And that third element is really the mysterious spiritual quality that we're looking for as humans, and which animals aspire to, and plants have by nature. Plants have this verticality. Plants are growing towards the light, even though the roots are in the Earth's center. And so that's why there's this middle openness on the board here. We have the two pillars on the side. We've got the one pillar of manifestation, and we have the opposite pillar of liberation. And I could take that into another frame using some of the terminology that Rudolf Steiner works with, and he talks about the Ahrimanic impulse and the Luciferic impulse. That these are spiritual beingness that are at work here in Project Earth, and they're working on the evolution of the human and all beings. And the Ahrimanic impulse, he borrows that term from the ancient Persian Zoroastrian teachings to refer to really the downward pull, the pull into manifestation. That spiritual impulse is what gives us the ability to take matter and work with it and transform it into something. You could say alchemically, that we can take, silicon and turn it into chips for a computer. Like, that's an Ahrimanic impulse. Like, it's a very earth-based thing, and it's based on very earth-like thinking, logic, and reason, and just a purely materialistic view of the world. And so we have Ahriman to thank, that it contributes from that pillar, from that side, this ability within us to transform matter into something of a different state, and hopefully use it for what?
Good.
Creative purposes.
Yeah, to make soda water for your drink.
That's the ultimate purpose.
What was that?
Creative purposes.
Creative purposes, yes. And why would we want to be creative?
That's expressing our God nature.
Right, yes. Not because we want to be good humans, but because we want to be good gods. Well, what about the other pole here?
To evolve.
Liberation. Isn't that really what it's all about? That whatever that word means, that's a big word, and I'm not, we'll take another night to talk about what liberation is. And so this Luciferic impulse helps us to go beyond the physical realm. Now, the dangerous side of that is opposite. Here we can be chained and enslaved to matter if we're too much on this side, then we become ungrounded and lost in space.
And there is this also the spiritual bypass.
Spiritual bypass. Right, exactly. What we're really looking at is, too much downwardness gives us scientism, and too much upwardnism gives us New Ageism, flakiness, half-truths, and spiritual bypassing. I have that book, Spiritual Bypassing, where your spirituality is not grounded in the experiences you're being given here on Earth. And so this is bringing us to the middle path. The middle path where we really need to understand what it is to be human. And of course, one way to understand it, how you're human, is to look at it in contrast to other things. Like, what's the difference between a human and a plant? It's one way to look at it. What's the difference between a human and an animal? That would give you more information. You could do that as an exercise. Or what's the difference between a human and a machine? Right? And a tree. But let's look at the difference between a human and a machine for a moment, because there's really this Ahrimanic impulse that wants to enslave us to the earth by this over-identification with technology, which the danger is subverting the self. And what is the key, the cornerstone to being a self?
Yeah, I am awareness.
Yeah. Self-aware. A self can be self-aware. It can be self-conscious. Can a machine be self-conscious?
Not that I know of.
Maybe not yet.
It depends if we allow them our consciousness, then yes. But they don't innately have it. That's why they're seeking ours.
Yes. Now, this is not to discredit the fact that there are spiritual beings connected to machines. This is where I want to go next, is that spirit, the trans-humanist agenda is to merge machine technology into a human. But where we really need to go is to put human into machines. And this takes us from the atomic technology that I was speaking about previously. There's atomic technology. Paul Emerson talks about resonance technology. Resonance technology is a step up where machines are operating on resonance and oscillation. And that produces something that's not death dealing. It's not producing death the way atomic technology does. And there can be emerging with humans and resonance technology, because we are resonant beings too. We have all sorts of oscillations going on inside of us because we are time beings. Time beings have patterns, rhythms, oscillations, cycles. And that primarily is in our etheric body, in the ethers. Right? We come down in manifestation through the ethers. So we have ethers. We have an etheric body, and there's primarily 4 ethers. There's the light ether, and then there's the warmth ether, and then there's the tone or chemical ether, and then there's the life ether. I won't get into that because that's a deep subject and we don't really need to go there. But in the ethers, there is this resonance that will allow us to merge with resonant technology. And that starts to take us into this whole question of free energy technology, which I'd like to do a whole evening on that at some time, but I won't open that up because I'm sure you'd all have lots to say about that. But we're talking about technologies that can be self-perpetuating and similar to something that's alive. Similar to the way the ethers work. So I'm going to read, let me just read a quote here from Rudolf Steiner. Talking about this resonance technology that, he was talking about this 100 years ago, and we're seeing it starting to emerge now. He was so prophetic and visionary that so much of what he spoke about is starting to come to pass. So many of his scientific statements have really proven true. So here he says, just as clocks are constructed today in accordance with the laws of the mineral kingdom, just as houses are built, so will humans be able in the future to produce living things in accordance with the laws of the living. But then he will have to be in a position himself to introduce life into the living things he makes. Whoever is doing this at the laboratory bench will have to be capable of drawing out of himself, let us call it, the oscillations of his own etheric body, and carrying them over into that which is to receive life. If he is a good man, then what he carries over is good. If he is evil, then what he carries over is evil. But there is a saying in occultism that the knowledge which people call the secret of creating life will never be released to humanity before people have learned the secret of sacramentalism. Da-ding. So what is he saying there? He's saying that technology is waiting in the wings, where humans are going to learn the secret to create things that potentially can be alive. And we're not talking about procreating, like that's kind of old school, and that's kind of losing its function as we go forward. We're going to lose our procreative abilities, and our lower organs, lower chakras and whatnot will not be the predominant forces of creation, but rather moving up into the larynx chakra and the power of the voice, where there is this oscillation and this ability for etheric sound. This is really the direction he's pointing to, for humans to consciously evolve, because we are going to be able to create things that we can then impart life into them by being able to transfer some of our own etheric body into it. This is like beyond sci-fi, but it's the reality that he speaks of. But the big caveat here is that, the occult truth is that these secrets will not be released to humanity until we have learned the secret of sacramentalism. All right, so what's sacramentalism?
Is that like retaining life in a way?
Sorry?
Like of course making it something more sacred, but retaining life. Until we learn the secrets of preserving what we've already have. That, like just as a
that's a nice indication.
As a parsley in the soup.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does have the word sacred in it.
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice, yes. Sacrament.
Secretion.
Isn't that still morals, though?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're talking at the moral life of
heart.
the human being. And so now we're going on to a third form of technology that is spoken of in this book, Machines and Human Spirit, that Rudolf Steiner is indicating. Moral technology. Moral technology, and I don't know if you went to the link on the Facebook event. I put a link there to a Facebook page called Moral Technology, and it's a page that's dealing with this whole subject of the morality around how we hold technology. If we're not capable of functioning as a moral being, then we're not going to be ready to receive and manifest the next stages of material evolution that's waiting in the wings. So let me read another quote here. Thinking is a living, creative activity that takes place in the etheric body. See, people think that thinking takes place in the brain. But Steiner says the brain is really a mirror that reflects things that are going on either outside or inside. It's just an interface that conveys information. The brain is great, but it's like an ATM. It just kind of transmits information and things in and out. We perceive our thoughts when we have formed them. They are reflected back to us by the physical brain. These finished thoughts are no longer living. They have become fixed and lifeless. It is these lifeless thoughts that are electric formations, or more accurately, patterns of vibration. Such electrical vibrations in the human brain and nervous system can be brought into connection with electrical oscillations in machines, and ultimately with the electrical processes that constitute atoms. Wireless telegraphy was the first rudimentary step in that direction. When the technique is fully developed, man's ability to control atoms through thoughts will give humanity complete mastery over the forces and substances of the lifeless mineral world. People will be able to unleash tremendous forces of destruction anywhere on the earth. Forces of destruction related to those released by nuclear fission today. So, tremendous power is wanting to be put into humans' hands, right? The supra-nature forces that have brought us to this point are wanting to give us now the responsibility and the empowerment to continue the evolution. That's our destiny. That's what we're being called to do. Step up to center stage and do the work that's waiting to be done by free will, self-aware beings that are morally upright. That we've mastered this sense of verticality, which is the middle pillar. The third.
To the power.
All right. So here we have pillar power, yes,
Yay!
in the middle,
Made a pillar.
between the other two, the pillar of manifestation, the pillar of liberation, the pillar of Ahriman, the pillar of Lucifer, the pillar of scientism, the pillar of New Ageism. So there's this balance point that is upright. It's not in the horizontal. It's in the upright because we have to redeem and resurrect. We need to resurrect what is frozen in matter, to release it, to allow it to take its next evolutionary step. So in doing this, that's why, on the Facebook event page I changed the title again to talk about the new spiritual path of master builders. But I want to make the reference to magic because it really is something to consider in moving forward with our powers, because you can say there's white magic, there's black magic, which is an abuse of magic, and if we abuse technology and the forces in it, I like to call it whack magic, because we can really whack ourselves and whack others through these amplified forces in electromagnetism and the etheric field. A lot of that's going on. I think some of these directed energy devices that have been made. I was following this last year with the fires in California,
Yep.
and people are thinking that they're using directed energy devices to start these fires because entire houses are being melted down. That's appliances, bathtubs, everything's being disintegrated to nothing, and yet trees standing around the house are still fine. So this is whack magic that's going on the planet with this abuse of these forces, and this is what brought down earlier civilizations. If you want to look into the whole idea of Atlantis, that there was a previous civilization in the area of the Atlantic Ocean that reached quite a high level of development, working with etheric forces. They were working with the life forces in plants, and they were able to fuel vessels that they had to, with a certain kind of levity, they were able to float above the earth using etheric forces. But there again, black magic got the better of them. They lacked the morality. They lacked the moral fiber and the moral uprightness to be able to handle that, and that brought about the fall of Atlantis. It also brought about the fall of Lemuria, an earlier civilization. And you could say it brought about the fall of Adam and Eve, from the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is every day. The fall from the Garden of Eden is every day. It's when we get seduced, right? And we get pulled away from that verticality, from the balance between the duality of Adam and Eve. That balance was disturbed, and they fell from a certain state of being into a lower state, and then they had to go through a process of redemption and resurrection to regain that former state. So in this, we're talking about this middle pillar that we're trying to develop, because it's not there just naturally. We're free will beings, so how can it just be given to us? We have to freely say yes to it, and then freely make the effort to manifest it. I'll read one more quote here. Rudolf Steiner. With all the things we have developed, we have descended today to to the physical plane, unless a moral culture arises over against this culture of the physical plane, these physical achievements will work destructively. By developing morality, the human being will be able to produce forces quite different from those existing on the physical plane. And he refers to Keeley. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the fellow Keeley. Back about 120 years ago, he was working with these etheric resonance devices. He refers to Keeley, set his motor going with vibrations he called forth from his own organism. Vibrations such as these depend on a human's moral nature. This is the first intimation of something that will form the technology of the future. In times to come, we will possess machines which will only operate in response to forces coming from human beings who are moral. Immoral persons will not be able to make them work. Purely mechanical mechanisms must be chained into moral mechanisms. This is really interesting because he talks about, culture is going to split into two paths. There's really going to be people that go down. People that are going to be taken down, they're going to become enslaved and seduced and really subverted in their self. And they will abuse power. They will abuse technology, and we're all going to suffer for it. But with the new resonant etheric technology that operates on your own etheric forces, only you are going to be able to operate it. And that's our hope. That is the hope for humanity, is that we are going to create beings, new technology, that will not be accessible to the immoral culture that will be present on the earth. And those that choose to step up and evolve and create these new life forms, we will be able to tap into their power exclusively and use it for the benefit of good. And this is what is meant by this term, the sacramentalization of matter and developing moral technology. And just to kind of move to the next step here, the best form of moral technology is the human heart. The human heart is this third. It is the third between the two. We have the thinking, and we have the will, and this middle, the third, the human heart, is the greatest device you could ever have. That the heart is not a pump, as Rudolf Steiner says. It is not a physical pump, and I have a lecture on that on YouTube called "The Heart is Not a Pump," that describes that to the best of my ability, but is an organ that is actually, it has been formed out of the ethers, right? Everything has been formed out of the ethers, and it continues to take in the ethers of the universe and etherize the blood, and then send out this etheric resonance into the universe. So with every heartbeat that you take, it's an opportunity to send out marvelous, beneficial forces. You're broadcasting, the way an antenna or a smartphone or any kind of device, out into the universe with every heartbeat. These, hopefully, it's moral, etheric, resonant forces that you send out. And I know from my own experience, when I'm not in alignment and I'm not in verticality and I'm not sending out those sorts of things, my devices go haywire. My technological, electrical devices go nuts because the sub-nature forces will try to get an upper hand. They're really, you could say demonic forces will try to get an upper hand when we are out of alignment, out of verticality. So this is why we need to become the new master builders. The new master builders. You've heard of the Freemasons, right? The Freemasons and all their esoteric stuff. They claim to be, descended from the lineage of Solomon, right? Solomon was the son of King David, and King David had the plan to build the temple, the edifice, to connect with spirit, to connect vertically. And then his son Solomon carried out the plan to do it. So the Freemasons considered their lineage coming from King Solomon, the original master builder of the temple. We don't have to pay attention to all this stuff in the media about the Freemasons and whatnot. You are the new Freemasons. We are called to be the master builders of that central pillar. The central pillar that's going to hold up the whole temple, that's going to give it the strength and integrity. And we have to build on a solid foundation. As Jesus said in the Gospels, he said, don't build upon sand, but build on a solid foundation. Well, what is the solid foundation? It certainly isn't anything in this temporal realm. It's nothing in the physical realm. This is not solid. This is temporal. This is so transitory, and it's becoming even more transitory. The solid ground is spiritual foundation, source, spiritual principles, of which you, your authentic self, is the chief cornerstone. Every building that is built has a chief cornerstone, of which everything else cues off of. The chief cornerstone of your building must be your authentic self. That's why you have to know who you are, what makes you different from an animal, what makes you different from a machine. And if you don't know that, you're not going to be able to build the new temple as a new master builder. Because this really is the highest art form. This is the highest art form, of which all other art forms are just preparation. One could think of this central column that we have literally is the central column running through the body of the chakras. We have to build our chakras. Our chakras are only half formed. Rudolf Steiner talks about that in his book Higher Worlds, that the supra-nature forces half developed our chakras. Now we, out of free will, have to finish the formation of them and bring them to full development like a lotus blossom. My friend here, Little Lotus. We have to do that. That's part of our work as master builders. And that's why the next talk in 3 weeks is called The Psychic and Psychological Function of Each Chakra. The talks I've got this winter, they're all really connected thematically. So the next talk is about building this central pillar in your temple, this column of chakras, understanding the psychic and psychological function of each chakra. We've talked about being a master builder. You're also called to be the next octave of alchemists. We need to be the next octave of alchemists. Alchemy started back in ancient Egypt. Hermes Trismegistus and all of that. And then it enjoyed a renaissance in the Middle Ages. When the church wasn't looking, alchemy had this great flourishing of activity. And of course that led to the development of chemistry. And chemists today think that alchemy is all kind of woo-woo and poo-poo. But we need to be the next octave of alchemy, because alchemy is not about working with physical substance primarily. Yes, there is an element of that, and what's known as the dross of alchemy, when you work alchemically, there's the dross, there's the off-castings, there's the refuse. That's the corpse. We need to work with the corpse of the earth. In fact, one day the earth, the physical earth, is going to be a corpse. The earth is going to die. That's its destiny. Just the same way that a caterpillar goes into its chrysalis and dies and then emerges as a butterfly. The earth is going to go into this corpse state and die, and the spirit of the earth is going to continue. The spirit of the earth is actually going to reincarnate. And our work as alchemists is to help with deciding what is the dross of the earth and what is the butterfly that is trying to emerge. And in fact, the butterfly that's trying to emerge is the ego. The human ego is central and very important to the work. Maybe you've heard that, we're supposed to get rid of the ego. Some of the older traditions, say, get rid of your ego. Are we to eradicate our ego? Well, maybe we're trying to work with egotism. Egotism is kind of a diseased or disturbed condition of the ego. But we're not supposed to eliminate the ego itself. We need, as master builders, to build the ego. That is the central pillar in the threefoldness of the human being, is this ego, which is what's going to emerge as a butterfly out of the chrysalis. That is the gold that's going to come out of the lead. And that is, Harry Potter fans, the Philosopher's Stone. Right? That was the ultimate achievement of an alchemist, was to be able to create the Philosopher's Stone. To get rid of the dross and to end up with the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone. It's not a rock. It's not like, oh, I got the stone here, Would you like to see it? No. It's not a rock. It's a substance. The Philosopher's Stone is a rarefied, high-level substance that we produce when we have the morality. Every alchemist knew that his inner state of being, had an influence on the work he was doing in the lab. Scientists today don't believe that. Scientists don't believe that their state of being will affect their research, will affect their experiments, will affect, their double-blind experiments and whatnot, because they're trying to be completely objective. And that's fine. Try to be completely objective, but there is still a subjective element. There is still something of the personal that influences substance. This is the point. Thank you for bringing that up, because this is part of the paradigm shift. Morality used to be dictated externally by higher authorities, right? They told you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, and if you didn't do it, this is what the consequences were. But this is the new, Steiner really, he calls it ethical individualism.
Yeah, that's the ethical.
Yes, ethical
it's
individualism.
More objective than morality is more subjective.
Yeah.
And very cultural.
Well, I'm trying to actually reclaim that word, because some words we need to claim back because they do have currency, but we need to understand we're not talking about somebody else deciding. We're talking from the inside, that you have a moral conscience that guides you as a moral compass. But this is the word that's used in these books, so that's why I'm using it. This whole idea of moral technology, that technology will respond to the moral nature of the human being that's connected to it. But this is the crossroads we're at right now. We're at a new Atlantean crossroads.
Yes.
We're sure people can produce atomic weaponry, atomic technology, and that will be the downward path. Those of us who work on the upward path, we're going to create technology that those people will not be able to activate. This is what's being said. Yeah, isn't that an amazing concept?
That's an amazing
That's awesome.
concept, but how would you make them not be able to use it?
This is resonance technology that you have invested your substance into, your ethers, that will only respond to your etheric code.
It's like a
I'm a
finger
software developer, so I'm just curious. I really like this talk, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people talk about this, but like, I'm curious of how you would stop somebody from using something. by
Well,
your
let's
waves.
not. It's not software. It's etherware.
So
Yeah.
it couldn't have
Oh yeah, they won't be able to make their own machines with their own ether.
They won't have the key. Yeah.
They won't.
Could it?
Point. People
'Cause they
that have
wouldn't.
not achieved that ethical
Right.
nature will not be given the knowledge
Okay.
on how to do it.
Okay, so once you've hit that point, that becomes kind of child's
We're
play.
really working within esoteric laws here.
Yeah.
We're going beyond physical laws into etheric laws, astral laws, and esoteric laws or spiritual laws, which is great. We need to be waking up to the fact that we're navigating those levels and not just an atomic physical level,
Okay.
which is ultimately leads to death.
How do we compete?
So yes,
It sounds like body language literacy.
but to the extreme. And we're talking about being born. We're talking about reincarnated with a physical body that shows very clearly what you've been doing in the past.
That reminds me of
That's an important point. Our clairvoyant ability really needs to rise strongly and rapidly, so we can see these things like beyond micro movements in the face, and that's what we'll get into in the next talk on the psychic and psychological functions of the chakras. Because as they develop, our psychic abilities and clairvoyant abilities, allow us to see beyond the veil of Maya, beyond the illusion. We can see the man behind the curtain. So I just wanted to finish off with 7 points that kind of summarize this talk that hopefully will point the way in your development as an ethical being, your development of this middle pillar, the third, which we need more R&R.
Oh yeah.
R&R means redeem and resurrect. We need to redeem and resurrect that which is frozen in matter. The spirit in us can redeem and resurrect the sub-nature forces that have been born of the supra-nature forces and carry it along with us on our evolutionary path. Second of all, as master builders, we need to get on with the edifying of the edifice. Edifying of the edifice. We need to edify the edifice of ourself and of the collective. Our work should be to edify one another, to speak whole thoughts, life-filled thoughts, nourishing thoughts that have soul warmth. Someone was asking earlier, what does soul warmth mean? This room is full of soul warmth. It's also full of physical warmth, but soul warmth is social warmth. And then that engenders spiritual warmth, the right kind of spiritual warmth that invites the right kind of spiritual beingness. The third point in our edifying of the edifice is to build on rock, not sand. Build on spiritual reality and not on temporal manifestation. Fourth point is the chief cornerstone of the work is the authentic alchemized self. The alchemized self. So that's really working on the ego self, turn it into the philosopher's stone, and make that the cornerstone of your work. Fifth point, the fifth point is to be a doctor of philosophy. Philosophy. Philo means to love, and Sophie is wisdom. We need to love wisdom and administer that as doctors to one another. That's the highest form of medicine. That's what the world is waiting for in its healing, is true wisdom, not the Band-Aid solutions we're so often given from supposed authorities. And then the sixth point is to follow the inner sun. If we follow the inner sun, we will not be misled by the external lights, the Luciferan lights that are half-truths and glitter like fool's gold, because Maya is there to test us. The world of illusion and delusion is there to test our insight as to whether it's true or not. And then the seventh point is to become a self-aware, free will server. If you're a free will server, you will not be a slave. Because the default is that you are a slave and you are not free. As Bob Marley knows with his redemption songs of freedom. He knows about slavery, and that's the default. We have to become free will servers to get out of slavery, coming from a place of wisdom-based conscious love. Thank you all for being a part of the circle tonight, holding each other. I wanted to finish off with a little bit of resonant technology. Inviting your ethers into the space. And the best way to produce ethers is through this larynx chakra. So I invite you to tone along with the bowls. And I'm going to be doing it primarily in F, which is, of course, the heart.